Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for the second panel discussion for the day, the role of CIO connecting people, processes, and technology. For which I would like to welcome the panelists, Mr. Ram Subramaniam R, General Manager IT TTK Prestige Limited.
Hey,
Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining.
thanks. Thanks for
And
having me here. Yeah.
thank you, sir. And I would like to welcome Mr. Udit Palwa, Head IT, Hashtamaki India Limited. Welcome, sir. And I would like to welcome Mr. Ashwin Prajapati, Chief Information Officer, Symphony Limited. And I would like to welcome Sujoy Sen, Head IT South Asia, Lind India Limited.
Hi
Thank you, sir,
Nishant,
for
thank you.
thank you so much for joining. And I would like to welcome Mr. Ketan Karkanis, Head IT India, Clarion Chemicals India Limited.
Thank you, Nishan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I would also like to welcome Mr. Vikram Karthik, GM Head Digital Transformation and Operations, Mahindra Group. However, he will be joining in about 5 to 10 minutes. Meanwhile, we are going to be starting the discussion. And also, I would like to welcome the moderator for the panel, Mr. KC Mishra, Project Head, Special Projects, Elets Technomedia.
Hello,
Hello,
namaskar, and
Mr.
good afternoon to
So,
all of
over
you.
to you, Mr.
Thank you, Nishant. Thank you for giving this opportunity to be a part of this esteemed panel discussion. The topic is very, very relevant in today's context. The role of CIO connecting people, processes, and technology. I think it would not be wrong to say if I mention that the role of CIO has become the most important critical role in today's times, particularly in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic and the pace at which digitization is taking place. And almost if we do not adopt automation and the emerging new age technologies on date, then there is a real threat of getting out of the business. This is not an exaggeration to say. So it is just so relevant and just so obvious that the role of CIO in maintaining the digital discipline and also in identifying the digital strategies and implementing the digital strategies, the safety protocols, all array of activities as far as digitization is concerned, the role has become extremely crucial. So to start with, I would like to invite opening comments from Ram Subramaniam, our General Manager IT in TTK Prestige Limited. Ram Subramaniam, your views on this topic.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. The role of CIOs are changing at a very fast pace. When we are talking about the role of CIOs in a traditional way, they were responsible for establishing the infrastructure as well as setting up the software applications, ensuring the operational of IT resources to equip the ecosystem for the business. But with the advent of new technologies such as digital, as well as the importance of data and information for the existence of any organization, it is becoming evident that every CIO is playing a larger or higher role than the traditional CIOs. And the uncertainties that's happening all over the world, whether it is geopolitical situation or might be emerging of new life threats like COVID pandemics, the role of CIOs are expanding as well as ever expanding beyond the technology. The CIOs are expected or the CIOs are playing a bigger role than earlier. And we let us view that modern day CIOs role in today's world. The CIOs are directly or indirectly responsible for the digital business as well as the growth of the digital business, since many of the organizations depends on the digital business as well as the way forward is also the digital business similar to ours. And the CIOs are not only ensuring the establishment of the ecosystem for the digital business as well as other line of business, but the CIOs today they are playing a bigger role to ensure that the digital business growth is present there. Similarly, when we are talking about the importance or significance of the information, the CIOs are playing a bigger role on the risk management related to cyber security or information security. Hence, the CEOs are not only technical leaders, that's one of the components in their balanced scorecard. But importantly, we have to understand that CEOs are slowly, I would say, slowly they are moving towards one of the members in the board. So that way, in fact, I would like to say that my role in our organization has expanded from IT to digital to cyber security to now it has moved to cyber resilience as well as bringing in the business resilience to the organization. So that's about my view.
Yes, you are actually right that the role of his typical CIO has evolved in current times. You mentioned from a typical IT leader or technology leader, now it has come, you use a very relevant term, cyber resilience or resilience. And also you mentioned that going forward, you are going to be one of the members of the board. And this is true for all the futuristic organizations. Let me bring in here Mr. Udip Pahua, Head of IT in Kotapati India Limited, for his views on this topic. The role of CIO in the current context.
Thank you, Krishna, and hello, everybody. Hello, fellow panelists. I think the context set by Ram Subramaniam ji is, I think, extremely pertinent. Uh, so, if I have to recap, the role of the CIO started, traditionally with what was called as the EDP department, where data used to come in and it used to get captured by a set of data entry operators.
Hmm.
And from there, it evolved to being, keeping the lights on, if that's the terminology which we used to use, keeping the lights on and ensuring that the infrastructure and the applications are available, and thereby helping the organization, enabling the organization on the technology front. But I think as digitization started setting in the early 2000s, and pandemic giving it a mega push, as rightly mentioned, I think the role has now transitioned from being an enabler to start getting in the role of a trusted business partner for the organization. And this is where you move from being merely provider of technology services to being a strategic partner in deciding how the technology is going to be used for the growth of the organization. So whether it is using technology to find new avenues of revenue, using technology to rationalize costs, gain competitive advantage, build product strategies. I think today people from technology function are expected to work hand in hand with business and help them on all these avenues of revenue, cost, faster go to market, innovations, and all these. So, yes, definitely the role has evolved, and it is no longer limited to providing laptop, desktop, network, printers, support, and probably rudimentary applications, right? So, that's my point of view. I think the CIO role has really evolved into being a business partner, and as Ramasubramanian ji mentioned, it's probably moving into the boardroom. And quite a few of us, our peers are already in the boardroom.
Very well said. Is contributing directly to the growth of the business, whether identifying new business streams is concerned, or identifying avenues of cost cutting is concerned, or identifying some new tools to reach out faster to the market is concerned. Very well said. Let me bring in here Mr. Ashwin Prajapati from Symphony.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me in panel. As my friends, uh, I mean Udit and Ram spoke and covered very largely about the currently the role of CIO. I would like to add couple of more pointers that CIO today is going to be a problem solver, or I would say that any technology intervention, or let us say any new business initiatives won't be possible without active participation of CIO. So CIO has to play a normal role, as he say, make ensure that the lights remain on, but more than that, it is expected that the CIO is actively participating into the business transformation. CIO is going to be remain ensure that if you are into the, let's say, the business of let's say we are into the business of consumers, direct consumer, where our role is to ensure that all our product reaches to the time to the end customer. Customers complaints are timely addressed, so there the business team expect very active participation of CIO. So if let's say there is a any deviation into in terms of any response time, whether it's a application or a CRM application or any other application, CIO has to be ensure that it remain up, and so that way CIO is not going to be remain only to ensure that the application remain up, but all the time he has to also bring the value out of business. So whether the product development or it's a sales and marketing function or it's an in-house manufacturing function, CIO has to constantly check that what value it brings on table in terms of process automation, in terms of business transformation, and just ensure that the current business runs with the fullest of its potential. So it's not going to be the where he just bring the reports on the table, or he brings the again every time if he bring the report, the next.
Vikram Karthik has joined us from the Mahindra Group, General Manager and Head Digital Transformation Operations. Vikram, a very warm good morning to you.
Hello, Krishna. First of all, sorry for joining late. I had
All right.
first wasn't prepared this morning. There were some personal commitments, and then
We
I
can
had to,
understand. No, this is a Saturday morning.
and I had some tech problems right
But
from the inverter, not
that is
connecting to
all the
the
weekends
laptop.
only. We can
And,
understand. No
sorry
problem,
for
Vikram. We were discussing the role of CIO in the current context, connecting people, processes, and technology, and how the role of the CIO has evolved in the current times, particularly in the context of the pandemic acting as a big trigger on it. And what do you see the way forward from here? So, opening comments from all the panelists. So, if I may invite you for your opening remarks
so the
before
role
I.
largely, uh, so the CIO role has largely become standardized now. It's not a discovery role. There are standard expectations with respect to that particular job description. And broadly, it is about one, be a single point of technology for the organization in terms of the solver of problems. And I put the CIO role into two buckets mainly. Right, one is to converge the purchasing power for technology into one place, so that every department does not shop separately and run different threads with different suppliers. So have a single point of procurement for all technology needs. The second is to operationalize technology, where, of course, people hear about solutions, people hear about their peers in the industry having adopted with a reasonable success rate, and all that inspiration comes to everyone within large organizations. The ability to operationalize technology is the CIO's responsibility. So I've heard of this. Somebody is doing it. Can we do it too? These should not be questions within the organization. The CIO has to solve for it and have an opinion about this is where we are headed. This is what we'll do. This is what we'll not do. We've discovered ABCDE tech stack, and this is how you start using it. This is how you stop using it, and these are the teams necessary which we have created capability for. Right. So right from discovery to handling system reliability to handling skill teams, the CIO JD is more or less to be a plug and play technology solution for the enterprise. Think of it as the biggest SaaS PaaS provider slash a single point of technology for the enterprise.
Okay, great. Sujoy Sen, your opening comments, please.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me, Krishna, for this session. Now, how I see this one is that the CIO roles is changing and evolving, and everybody is echoing the same view. But I see more this is turning to be a strategist kind of a role, right? Because in today's world, like when we talk about a technology, and technology is a constantly evolving technology, right? And especially when you come from a manufacturing industry, which probably many of us are. Um, adoption of technology is so called, I mean, if you relatively do a comparison, adoption of technology is slightly slower in the manufacturing industry compared to your consumer industry or banking, BFSI, and other areas. So the CIO as a strategist, what I think Vikram was trying to indicate, that we have to keep an eye that where the technology is changing and sort of be visible that what is our organization demand is, right? And then it's responsible for strategically selecting the right technology for solving the right problem itself, right? So it creates a nice bridge between what is the technological solutions coming in, what is the business problem, and how can we marry these two things together to get the better solution and better benefit for the organization. There's another aspect which is also becoming very strong. Like most of the, at least the manufacturing industry, because of the business and the macroeconomic situations and all, we all have been asked to do more with less, right? What we call, in a normal terms, we call the productivity gains itself. It's not only a target for us, but it is a target across the organization. Now, that is what I feel as a CIO, we have got a or as a technology enthusiast, we have a brighter role to play. That how can we use our resources, like whatever the resources, people, process, assets, whatever we have, right? How can we use it to gain the maximum business benefit itself? So that's also something what a CIO has to do. And it is not only a traditionally a technology role itself, it's something beyond that. So you have to understand the people aspect, you have to understand the process, you have to understand the business, and then put everything together where there is a business benefit which is coming. So I see that it has moved completely from a technology role at one point of time to a strategist role now, right? So that's what I see it coming forward.
You could not have been more correct. Moving or transitioning from a technology perspective to a purely strategist, and is truly well said. Let me here bring in our last panel speaker, Mr. Ketan, before I throw the floor for cross questioning. Ketan Karkhanis from Clariant Chemicals Limited for his opening comments. Ketan.
Yes, thanks, Krishna. And, good afternoon once again to all the fellow panelists. Thanks for having me here. Let me start with a statement that, I feel that it's a very bad time for someone to be a very average CIO. You know, it's a very bad time because currently with these emerging technologies, with so
Correct.
much transformation happening in the business side, especially in the manufacturing sector, you know, CIOs are really expected to do more, right? They are now all this year CIOs have been managing the change. So whenever there is any change, any new technology coming in, any new, for example, systems or technologies or printers, etc., we have to manage that change. But now is the time of CIOs to lead the change. That is a new dimension which has come to the CIOs, right? In the traditional way, I think, maybe a few years back, CIOs were expected to do digitization, which means electronization, just maybe converting paper to paperless, something of that sort. Now CIOs are expected to do digitalization, which is change of process, the change how company operates. How do we change of how do we do business? How can we improve go to market? How can we enable omni channel? All these questions are arising, and it is coming on the CIO's table, right? So gone are the days wherein IT or CIO were just looked at as a business commodity. They are now more of a business enabler. So they are really looking, I mean, business is looking at CIOs to improve their top line, improve sales, improve profitability using all the emerging technologies. So I think there is a lot of pressure on the CIOs, and it's a good pressure, I would say, because first time ever CIOs are now, as we mentioned in the beginning, they definitely should be on the board, and they are now getting involved in strategies and all these discussions, wherein earlier they used to be out of it. Yeah, so I think this is, I would say, a big change that has happened to CIOs.
Correct, Ketan. I would not be. It would not be wrong to say if earlier the CIO role was seen more as a supporting role or a sort of say your staff function, and it would not be wrong to say now we can call it a critical function or a line function, which is directly
Yep,
contributing to the growth of the business. The
absolutely.
first question I would like to pose for Mr. Rama Subramaniam here. Uh, although we have briefly touched upon all these aspects of this point in our opening remarks, Mr. Ramasubramaniam, how can a CIO help in shaping the success of a business? Do we expect a CIO to be more on the business side, or he shall remain on the tech side?
Okay. So we were discussing about traditional CEOs as well as the modern day
Modern.
CEOs. Yeah, so traditional CIOs, as we have seen, responsible for facilitator, as well as modern day CIOs are enabler and decision maker on behalf of the business. So when I'm saying decision maker, it's not only setting up D&A kind of a thing for the business, bringing in that kind of intelligence to the business, and also bringing in that kind of strategic in nature. Even business strategy is not getting a shape without the CIO of late. So CIO was also contributing in a bigger role to ensure that the business strategies are getting shaped as well as implementable strategies. So that's a great thing. And modern day CIOs are equipped with business acumen, more and more business acumen. So it is not that they need to know about the technology jargons as well as the technology. They also need to understand about the business and also the emerging markets, bringing in that kind of intelligence to enable the business to operate, sustain the leadership position, or gain the leadership position. So it's a bigger role. When I'm talking about strategy, today it is happy to see that even business leaders are involving the CIOs to finalize the business plan. That's a welcome approach. What we can see of late that's happening. And similarly, now the leadership team starts understanding about the cyber threats as well as factoring the cyber threats on the business strategies. So it is not that to gain the digital income, simply following certain processes, no shortcuts kind of a thing. There are certain sort of scrutinization happening along with the CIOs to ensure that there are no security threats, cyber threats on the digital side. So that's also happening. And as well as CA was also contributing not only on, as I was mentioning, the information threats, but even savers today they are contributing more and more on the other sort of business risks and mitigating those risks while defining or devising any of the new technologies. Today's CIOs, modern day CIOs are contributing more and more to eliminate those kind of threats, a competitive threat or frauds kind of a thing, and eliminating those kind of threats in defining or shaping up the strategy. And another aspect that is happening today is that we used to call it as the market intelligence. So CEOs are playing a big role in bringing in this market intelligence and as well as setting up the due analytics, data and analytics for the business leaders to not only sustain as well as excel in their leadership position. So my view is that CIOs are an important factor in an organization, especially the leadership team, as well as I was mentioning that they are closely inching towards part of the board.
Correct. So, bringing in the market intelligence, doing some deep data analysis, and arriving at some informed decisions, one of the most crucial enabling functions of the CIOs. Maybe Vikram Karthik would like to add more on this point. Vikram. Vikram, we are discussing the role of CIOs in shaping the modern day business.
The role of, again, sorry.
The role of CIO, how can a CIO help in shaping the success of a business? Do we expect a CIO to be more on the tech side, or now time has come for him the intelligence, need of data
Right,
analysis,
right.
need of arriving at informed decisions, contributing to the futuristic growth?
So I would say yes to both. The dotted line here is between what is the CIO's responsibility or share of responsibility is. Is the CIO responsible for marketing growth? Is the CIO responsible for sales growth? Is that attributable to the goal sheet of the CIO? or is the CIO's prime responsibility to run technology organizations, right? So the salesperson is not going to, the salesperson is going to potentially offload the technology bit to the technology person, right? The technology person cannot offshore or outsource a bit of their goal sheet onto sales organizations or marketing organizations or manufacturing flow, right? Except for adoption. So, in my opinion, the CIO should stick to what his or her core competency is, which is technology, and do it reasonably well. Do it with stickiness for the organization's growth, for the organization's vision, but not step into solving problems that are largely with different products, which is not the CIO's expertise. So I would want the CIO to be a pure technology person and to only poke into places where there is overall command of skill, overall command of people.
Udit Pahwa, would you agree with Vikram on this point?
Well, Vikram, yes, being an expert on technology is something which is a given when you're a technology leader. But I think with the changing scope of work, the landscape, whatever we want to call it, being just an expert on technology is today, in my opinion, considered as a skill which is going to set you back until and unless you don't know how the business works, what are the intricacies, what is the problem to solve for the business, what is the use case that you are looking at, which will add value maybe to the top line, bottom line, maybe the personal efficiency of an employee, the manufacturing output is going to get increased, etc. That is something that is needed from an understanding perspective to solve the right problem. So it's like, if I have to take if I have to take an example, you can be the best medical professional, but if you don't feel the pain of the patient, you may not get the right diagnosis. Uh, so at this point in time, and with this analogy, actually, uh, the more you know the business, how a transaction is conducted. See, if you know only from the technology perspective that A is entering data X, B is approving in the workflow, C is viewing it, whatever. This is pure the transaction layer, and the technology is enabling it. But when he is entering the data, when he is capturing the data, what is he going through? Where is he getting the data from? These are the points in which I think that's where the business angle comes in. And when you understand how a transaction is affected by the user, when he is uh, when he's gathering data, is he using a lot of Excel? Can that pain be eradicated? Is the process dependent? So if he's going on leave for a week, will that work suffer or not suffer? That's the process enabling. And the topic that we're discussing is people and processes, and whether we get into people processes or just stick to technology. So if I just stick to technology, I will be defining the workflow, whether the workflow will be 100% able to solve the problem or not. And that's I personally spend a lot of time on the shop floor. And I work with the technicians, I work with the shift in charge and everyone to understand. Although we have our technology, our ERP, etc., implemented, but there's always scope for improvement. And that improvement is when you go and sit next to the guy who's actually turning the machine on the shop floor, is when you understand his way of working, his way of functioning. And that's when, then you bring in the technology and tell him, okay, you're doing it in XYZ way. How about looking at it in ABC way and achieve the same result, but with lesser time or less effort, etc. So, yes, being an expert in technology is a given. However, bringing that knowledge to solve a relevant business issue and improve it, or give new insights into how the work can be done in a much better way, to that extent you would need to understand how the business is functioning, how the money is getting generated and how the money is getting spent, both sides.
So basically, you are saying of integrating the two. The the process as
It
well as
has
the
to be.
people.
It has to be. It
And
has to see
both are,
today.
both are
We
the companies.
expectation. The expectation from everybody is,
Mm.
if there is something to be done, there will be an app for it. That the mobile world today has exploded. Even the users forget we at home. In the corporate world, everybody expects the service levels of an Uber app, or maybe an Amazon app, where there has to be an app for everything. So how do you get into that digital age? Then you need to understand how things work in the back end to give it shape in the digital way. So the two have to merge together.
Let me bring in here Sujoy and Ketan one by one, their views on it. Whether the CIO should remain stuck to the typical tech role, or they should now step out into the business role and contribute to the overall growth of the organization. Sujoy.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with this, right? Because what as a CIO you are doing is that you are contributing to the business, and for contributing to the business, it's very important to understand the business, right? As Udit was mentioning that, so as a CIO, because you are catering to the larger part of the organization, there are different functions, right? So the challenges, I mean, it's basically a challenge from an individual perspective to understand the business processes in multiple areas. So you need to understand that, okay, how the marketing is functioning, how the sales team is functioning, how the manufacturing is happening, what are the distribution channels, how can you optimize on that. So that creates a much broader aspect, because the ability to contribute with technology and improve the process and the people utilization or the people function, the resources itself, is immense, right? So you can do it in multiple area. So it's basically I mean, too much to do from one individual perspective itself. So that's what I see as a challenge itself, that not only that we have to do it, it is difficult for us to cater to so many different business segments and work on that and get a process improvisation or value add onto that, right? So it's a really exciting role, and it has really moved from a basic the keeping the lights on kind of. Nobody nowadays talks about whether your servers are up 98% or 99.99%, because it's given, right? Whenever we go for a business review meeting, we don't even get to spend a minute on that what is the current business lights on kind of a situation, because it is expected my SAP will always be running 24/7, the network is always up there. So these are given things, right? So now people are thinking, okay, these are done and dusted, so what more you can do? And this is the areas where they're coming in. And the future is getting even more complex, especially with the new technologies, as I am saying, is coming in. And we have to be ready with all this and move forward, and that's the challenge of this particular role what we have.
Correct. Ketan.
Yes, I mean I can't agree more to Udit and Sujoy on what what they discussed, right? I think CEOs today are spending increasingly more and more time on understanding the strategic benefits of technology towards business, especially with these emerging disruptive technologies like digital and analytics and automation and all. What is there for the company? What is there for the top line growth? What is there for the sales and so on and so forth, right? So I mean, it's a very good time for the CIO to move from a very functional role to a strategic business leader, because I think the entire business strategy is dependent on what are the technologies, how do we run the technologies, and how are we managing those technologies, right? I'll give an example in my company Clarion.
Mm.
Earlier, few years back, we had a very normal organization. Like we had the CIO, then we had the network operations and server operations and so on and so forth. We have changed it completely in past couple of years. Now we have got these subdomain heads, as they call it. So there is a IT person for HR, there is an IT person for sales, there is an IT person. I mean, some IT people are doing maybe one or two service units, but there is in each and every function of the company, manufacturing, production, supply chain, there is an IT point of contact. And they understand that a lot can be changed with the selection of good technologies. So ultimately, the CIO, if you see the holistic picture, it has to be very deeply involved with the business strategies, what's happening, and accordingly adjust themselves. Yeah, so I would say that, yeah, just to summarize, like I mentioned earlier, CIOs now really have to be, a business IT leader, something of that sort.
Strategic business leader, as you rightly mentioned.
Yep.
My next question for Mr. Ramasubramaniam: how manufacturing industry is preparing for inevitable and unpredictable change? What are key trends in growth strategies? If you may like to share some of your own examples, Ramasubramaniam.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing this perspective that inevitable as well as uncertainties are going to be there. And only thing is that as a part of business continuity measures, the CIOs have to gear up and then they have to prepare a plan to mitigate those uncertainties. When we are calling up inevitable, let us say that the whole world has changed in the last 2 years. Manufacturing never thought of working from home kind of a thing. It's for my organization especially, we never thought of that we will be working from home, which is a very distant dream for us. But COVID pandemic has brought in that, and which calls for high level of collaboration among the manufacturing as well as service functions, manufacturing, sales and service functions. So, when we are talking about inevitable, highly collaborative, now collaboration, when we are talking about, it has three factors: people, process, and technologies. So, all three have to go hand in hand to ensure that the team members are highly collaborative. Of course, certain areas like shop floor cannot be taken up from work from home kind of a thing. And one more new aspect that is emerging, which is work from anywhere. So it's a mixture of work from home, work from office, work from anywhere, any place. So it's a hybrid in nature, wherein which is inevitable. And also, as we are seeing that great resignations, and also the employees' expectation on any organization, allowing them to work from anywhere. All these are happening over the days, as we are seeing. Then, when we are talking about from the organization goal or objective side, always organizations would like to do the war on waste kind of a thing to improve the process efficiencies. So, which is increasing off late since there are growing costs that's happening aftermath the geopolitical tension between Ukraine and Russia. So naturally, the costs or raw material costs or the costs of operations are increasing. So now technology has to play a big role to bring in the intelligence to arrest the revenue leakages, as well as bring in the information or the data about where more expenses are happening, and also where there are scope of improvement or scope for arresting or opportunity for arresting the leakages. So this sort of the data sets through analytics are helping the manufacturing leaders. When we are talking about the other aspect that's happening, it's a direct to consumer. Everyone would have seen that direct to consumer is gaining momentum, and also we are also noticing that there are every organization attempting to service the customers, be it CPG industry or FMCG or any even the service industries from BFSI sectors. Everything is happening from direct to consumer mode, and also manufacturing also it's gearing up. So when we are talking about that, there are many new processes, new technologies are explored in setting up those direct to consumers. And when we are talking about inevitable, process automations are inevitable for an organization. And also the new kind of emerging threats that are coming up with the advent of working from anywhere, that's inevitable, and manufacturing organizations are gearing up towards mitigating those cyber risks. And as well as another area where it is getting up is the infrastructure readiness. So those days are gone that everything are hosted on premises and then operating. Now everyone are cloud first kind of a thing, wherein every manufacturing organizations are gearing up towards the cloud, adopting the cloud, so that work from anywhere or work from home is possible, made possible. So these are the inevitable factors. And when we are talking about the people also, digital maturity for the people is inevitable. Now, no more we cannot say that I have spent 30 years or 35 years, I can continue as it is until my retirement. So even the person, employee who is going to get retired in another few years, he has to gain the digital knowledge to adopt the digital practices. So we are working on several areas to bring in the digital culture and embrace the digital technologies in our organization. Yeah.
Hmm. Thank you, Mr. Ram Subramaniam. Ketan mentioned a very relevant term, strategic business leaders, the requirement of today's CIOs to become real-time strategic business leaders. And this is more true because the impact of digital transformation on the business landscape continues to create significant challenges for leaders in manufacturing. Could you elaborate more on this, Udit?
Yeah.
Udit, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So, when we evaluate the landscape today of business, uh, if you look at the financial industry, it's getting disrupted by the fintech startups. If you look
Hmm.
at the transport industry, they have been disrupted by the startups using the aggregation model. If you look at the consumer brands today, established consumer brands are getting disrupted by startups who are bringing direct business to consumer using the social media and other such platforms to creep into the revenues of established players. So how has all this been made possible? It's been made possible by using the digital technologies, by using the emerging technologies, etc. And these are the disruptors today which every organization has to sit and take cognizance of. And how do we use these to not only insulate ourselves as an organization, but also use it to our competitive advantage so that we grow using this. So these are the disruptions that one has to take part of. And I think, uh, Rama Subramaniam ji very beautifully articulated it, that getting effective data for decision making. So people are expecting, if some event happens, it should be available for analysis so that a corrective course action can be taken, right? That's on the analytics part. And uh, due to the onslaught of I would say consumerization of apps, even the users are expecting, as I mentioned before, there has to be an app for everything and I can work from anywhere. So this brings in the challenge of security and authentication. So that itself is a disruption for the organization. While it can be argued that connectivity enabling work from anywhere, etc., is a technology issue, but the fact is it is disrupting the organization structure. So that is another aspect which needs to be dealt with. And I would say, there was a point, how do we use technology in the top line, bottom line, or for further growth. I will give you a small example, one from my industry, one from not my industry. Whenever we go, somebody spoke, I think Ketan spoke about CPG or something. So whenever you go to, let's say, a supermarket and you are picking up something which is a consumable, the first thing generally what a person sees is you flip it and you see what is the expiry date. So how much time do you have left to consume that product and whether you would like to buy it within that time. What if technology tells you when you pick it up, there is automatic color coding which tells you that 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months is left. So that's one use case of technology on the packaging side. So this is from my industry. The other part which we have successfully implemented in previous one is authentication of genuinity of a product. When you go to any shop, I'm just saying any shop, and you pick up a product, there is always a general doubt in your mind. So is this genuine or it is not genuine? What would you like to do? Take out your mobile camera, scan a QR code, press a button, and you should get a pop-up saying, this product is genuine. How is this done? This is done using technology. So these are the avenues which, also form as a part of, can shape up as a digital disruption for the business to adopt and gain competitive advantage. So that's my contribution to this point.
Thank you, Udit. Suja, your perspective also on this point in today's complex and turbulent times, the role of a CIO as more of a strategic business leader rather than purely a tech leader. Your your take on it.
Yeah, true. I
Sorry,
mean, probably in the opening comments we were talking about.
you did briefly mention about it. Yes.
In the opening comments, we spoke about that as an organization, we are asked to do more with less of resources, right? Which is basically a productivity part. And as the macroeconomic factors, what everybody mentions, are pushing more towards that, right? The competitions are increasing, the market segments are changing. So we have to be adaptive towards that. So uh, I see, unlike many other functions, like our colleagues in the leadership teams of the CFOs or the production heads or the marketing heads, unlike them, the CIO has got that ability to influence the larger organization, right? So as a CFO, probably it's more on the financial parts and the parameters and one particular sections of that particular business, right? Whereas we are being able to contribute more. And I see this journey will continue. I mean, this is not going to end in a near terms itself. Like today, we are talking about AI, ML, data analytics, deep learning. There's another set of technology which is waiting to be adopted, right? So people are already talking about blockchain adoptions into manufacturing, right? What kind of use cases? I know it's a very very early stage, but probably if we just spend another 5 to couple of years, I think this will be something of a product to be used in the manufacturing industry. So people are talking about a quantum computing now, right? So these are these are technology which are just sitting there to be adopted, right? And the times will come when we have to adopt them and take it forward. And take it forward into which direction? Take it forward into a direction where it can give more productivity benefits to the organization, right? So what we could do for a larger team. I mean, if I talk about our organization itself, so if we go back 20 years back, so one plant was managed by, say, about 200 people are there who are operating, the operators, and everybody is there. Nowadays, I mean, a particular plant is probably managed by 2 to 5 people, not more than that, because everything is automated. We have created a central monitoring center, and all the manufacturing plants are working in that particular manner. Now, this is what is enabling this to be happening, right? This is being enabled by the adoption of technology. And that is where the value is. And there's no limit to that. Tomorrow, what it is going to bring into us. So that's what my take on this would be.
Let me bring in here Vikram. Uh, what, according to you, should be the key attributes and best practices of a CIO, which could be used to measure the maturity of the people, process, and technology?
I'm going to take one good practice that a CIO was supposed to bring in, right? The ability to have a KPI-driven or a data-driven organization. Let me double-click on it. The CIO's job should be to create these pipelines so that any KPI measurement of performance of anything, be it people, process, technology, happens seamlessly, and that product mindset sets in. Let me double click on it, right? In order to, let's take people, right? To standardize how we run goal sheets for all people. For tech resources, it could be about velocity, it could be about craftsmanship, it could be about upskilling, it could be about adopting new capability. Uh, let's say one capability from hype cycle for each one of those people. So let's take having a pipeline for measurement of sales roles, right? From life cycle, sales life cycle, from lead to loyalty or discovery to delivery. for marketing roles, let's say, from establishing brand superiority through share of use to positioning to customers being brand advocates. So let's say that somebody brought in 100,000 reviews more this year, something like that, right? So the CIO's responsibility is to one create these pipelines for measurement of these facts, something that will hit the fact sheet that year, right? Let's take process. Standardizing how processes are created, how processes are distributed, how workflow tools are deployed, how success and optimization is tracked, right? What are the touch points that we have? So how do we drive overall a KPI driven organization so that the health of the organization is visible on a single panel? Let's take technology. How do we drive tech solutions from discovery to full scale enablement? How do we do a dipstick? How do we measure which technology drove what result for us? Right. So in short, I spoke of one best practice that a CIO has to implement as part of the job, which is to create these pipelines for standardization of technology usage. Thank you.
Ramasubramaniam, key attributes and best practices CIOs could use to measure the maturity of people, process, and technology.
Okay, so we are fond of talking about customer experience, the digital transformation, all transformations. But when we are saying that, so far we were discussing about the modern day CIOs and their role. So it is the greater responsibility of the CIO to ensure that the function which constitutes within the organization, that is the IT function, has to get transformed to equip the new age organization expectations. So while discussing that, the benchmarking as well as the success metrics, that is essential to get shaped up for the IT team, the within IT function itself. And when we are talking about the benchmarking, it should start with user experience, user adoptions, understanding, know your customers, know your users. That's very important of today's world. Since management is investing a lot on technology, and business leaders are spending their time on devising the strategies, now it is at the time of execution. When we are talking about execution, the technology evangelist is none other than the IT team who are enabling or driving these changes. So, first, IT team or IT function has to get transformed or changed, and also they should ensure that the user departments are having good amount of knowledge, awareness, as well as good experience, so that they can also emulate. So it is the responsibility of the CIO to ensure that he is setting the platform. Benchmarking, let us take, I am taking unrelative benchmarking here. Always I am fond of about customer service team. When we are talking about customer service, it's not only customer facing. Customer service does the benchmarking, success metrics, or measuring the KPIs for towards the customer. Similarly, IT function also should start measuring the success metrics in terms of customer service. So we started using few of the metrics like CSAT survey. We are doing CSAT survey with major departments within our organization to understand where do we stand, what is the contribution of IT towards the expectation of the business users. Then another one is about the turnaround time. If there are certain support needs are there, we are measuring the tax. So this is few of the metrics where it's really giving good benchmarking. We have also set benchmarking in line with customer service, and some of the benchmarking is this is towards bringing in efficiency within the IT. Today, IT is responsible for mostly responsible for the change management or improvements. So our benchmarking is towards the deliverables on the new technologies. more on deliverables on the technologies rather than the traditional support activities. So we follow the 80-20 rule. 20 percentage of effort and time will be spent on support activities, and 80 percentage on improvements or transformational activities. That way. So our benchmarking is towards that. And one more area where I would like to bring in is about the maturity. So, using various digital maturity frameworks to assess the maturity levels of IT team, IT function, and then about other functions, key functions, and also benchmark with the leading organizations, whether within the same industry or other industries, and then improve upon, workouts, action plans, and then improve upon. So these are all some of the action plans when we are talking about the benchmarking as well as the actions that is taken up in our organization.
Ketan, you would agree that people, processes, and technology, they are integral to any business transformation we talk about. So we would like to we'd like to hear your views on or your insight on the importance and linkage of each components in your sector.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also called the golden triangle,
Hmm.
PPT as they call it, people, processes, and technology, right? And it's basically a methodology which is the balance of people, balance of processes, and a balance of technology. See, any technology, and we briefly discussed in the beginning as well, it needs to add business value, right? I mean, people need to know how to use it, and then it also needs to have the right processes. So it's all linked to each other, right? I mean, if a particular technology does not add any value, it's like a hobby, right? And also, I would say that especially in the manufacturing sector, people are the most important, for any strategy, be it digital or be it any other strategy. The people part, is the most important part. I mean, I remember a very good statement. um, Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay, so it's ultimately the culture of the company. It's the people, basically. However technology you implement, however technology you use, is ultimately, if it's not integrable with the people, it's gonna be a failure. Now, digital transformation, it's not only about software and technology and systems and sensors. It basically is. It touches these three elements, which is people, process, and technology. And if these are not aligned, this entire thing can fail, and it will not get an acceptance, right? Especially because technology has it's very expensive, right? It's not a very cheap thing. And for it to ensure, I mean, for it to run smoothly, we have to ensure that the people are integrated, the processes are integrated, and if they don't, it definitely won't create value from a ROI perspective, right? I mean, I'll give you an example. We were talking since many years about implementing RPA, robotic process automation, right? In one of our business units, right? But then we really needed a deep dive that, okay, where exactly am I going to use it? Now, firstly, the moment you say RPA, the moment you say that some processes will be done by robots, it gives a very different thought in the minds of the user that, hey, are they replacing people? So are they replacing the people with the technology, right? So we started with the communication first, that okay, this is what we are implementing, but it's not about letting people go. It's just so that the mundane jobs that we do, that the robot can do 24 by 7. You don't need to give them a weekly off or bank holiday, nothing, right? And the people who are doing it in the past, you better focus on doing some value added business. We don't want you guys to waste your talent and do some mundane waste. So we started with that communication, that initiative, and then eventually we implemented. So that implementation happened quite smoothly. If we wouldn't have done that, then definitely it would be some feedback from the user, hey, what's happening, and then people start speculating, right? So I mean, this was just an example about the integration of people, process, and technology in manufacturing. Yeah.
Udit was asking the same question to me, so I wrote on the chat box. Sorry, Udit, I saw it late. I was discussing the importance of the three, the golden triangle, as rightly mentioned by Ketan here. Maybe that you would like to summarize it.
No, I think Ketan is very well
There's nothing
articulated.
to summarize.
Sorry.
I'm saying Ketan has left nothing for you to summarize. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know. Yeah, but still, I'll.
Yes.
So yeah, I think if we take the example of a three-wheeler auto, the three wheels are people, process, and technology. If one goes flat, you will still be able to drag on, but you are not going to get the speed and agility.
Mm.
Uh, and if the tire pressure in one of them is higher than the other, you will have a rough ride. So that's giving you an analogy on what Ketan said, right? The fine balance has to be there. If we just enable a process, a manual or a physical process using technology, we don't do a digital transformation, we do a computerization. And I have to give you an example which I saw quite a few years ago. Is one of the government departments adopting digital technology. What they used to do, you give an application, the application is taken in window 1, is passed on to table 1 with a stamp, goes to table 2 for verification, goes to table 3 for confirmation, then goes to the cash counter, you pay the fees, you get a token, and then you keep inquiring on that token on the delivery counter, and you will get what paper you requested for. Now, this is the manual process. How do we
Mm.
adopt digitization? We simply put in a workflow where you will put in a request. That request will travel from one station to second to third to fourth, and then you will get a token number on which you can keep refreshing the browser to see where the status of your application is. While we've used technology, have we added value to the whole process? So that's where the process re-engineering and adding back business value change management comes in. So, like Ketan said, PPT, uh, the fine balance between P, P, and T is something which really gives back a lot of value to top line, bottom line, efficiencies, cost, whatever you call it. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Udit. It was really a very engaging panel discussion. Before we conclude, let's have a quick concluding remarks from all the speakers here, starting from Mr. Subramaniam. We were discussing the role of CIO in the modern context, connecting people, processes, and technology. Concluding remarks from Mr. Ram Subramaniam.
Yeah. So I would say that the role of CIOs is very challenging but interesting, and also it's emerging, and always it's emerging, and that is facilitating the CIOs also to grow up the ladder in the industry. And always its CFOs are towards business IT alignments. So they play the big role, and also it is going to continue. And in the coming days, I expect that, as some of my co-panelists were saying, that now CEOs are spending more time with technology leaders. Yeah, it is going to increase. Not only CEOs, even I am seeing that CHROs, CFOs, as well as CMOs, they are spending more time with CIOs, since they depend on technology not only to become a leader, but also to sustain the leadership as well as grow further. So, interesting days ahead for the CIOs to play a big mammoth role in the organization. Yeah.
So, Joy,
True. Yeah, I think I would agree with all the comments, and I would say that people, process, technology, as everybody mentioned, that the golden triangle. I think that is what is going to rule that. And as I said, that the fine balance, what Udit was mentioning, I think the CIO can definitely play that role of balancing it out, so that we are not twisted in any of the side itself.
Ketan.
Okay, just to summarize, yes, what we have been discussing in this session, definitely very interesting time ahead, for the CIOs, right? As I mentioned as in my first statement, it's a bad time for an to be an average CIO, So
Mm.
really, there is a lot of discussion happening in most of the industries, that there should be a lot of upskilling to the CIOs, because I think it's really, CIOs are would be part of the business strategy. So they also should have a fair bit of the way the business leaders were treated in the past, in terms of training, upskilling, talent management, and all these things, right? So it's good to be in this industry at this point of time. It's very exciting, and it's transformational, and up to us to be part of this big transformation.
Udit, sorry, Udit.
Yeah, I think all I can say is I agree with everyone's comments. There's nothing much more for me to add. Exciting times ahead, and as we started the topic, the role has changed. The role is changing. Expectations have changed. Expectations will be much more greater, and so will be the challenges. So I think it's going to get integrated. The role is going to get integrated into core business, mainstream functioning of the organization, which runs on technology. So that much more exciting and that much more responsibility.
Thank you, Udit. Thank you all. In fact, all of you gentlemen, it was truly a very inspiring discussion here. We discussed the role of the CIOs in the current context, and we discussed how we are now on the poise of being a truly on the verge of a truly exciting times and truly a transformative role which the CIOs are now expected to assume in times to come. In fact, today's times are quite challenging, quite turbulent, and the role of CIO could not have been more complex and more important in this current context. And as all the speakers were unanimous in one point, the role of the CIO has now actually transitioned and transformed from a mere tech leader to a business leader, where they are expected to directly contribute to the top line and bottom line of the business by identifying new revenue streams, by identifying new product streams, by identifying streams for cost cutting, and also being a critical enabler of competitive advantages, competitive differentiators. So truly exciting times ahead. My best wishes to all of you gentlemen here, all from the tech domain. I hand it over to Nishant Kuti, my colleague from the edit department. Nishant.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen, for such a great discussions and interesting insights. Thank you for your each. And as a token of appreciation, we would like to certificate to all the speakers. Can we have the certificates on the screen, please? I would like to thank Mr. Ramasubramaniam, our General Manager IT TTK Prestige Limited. Thank you, sir, for joining us and sharing the insights.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for giving the opportunity to express my views.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I would like to thank Mr. Vikram Karthik, General Manager, Head Digital Transformation and Operations, Mahindra Group. Thank you, sir, for joining and sharing the insights. And I would like to thank Mr. Udit Hama, Head IT, Hashtamaki India Limited. Thank you, sir, for joining in.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure expressing my views, and it was truly an engaging panel discussion that we had. It's an honor and privilege to receive this certificate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And also, I would like to thank Mr. Ashwin Prajapati, Chief Information Officer, Symphony Limited. Thank you, sir, for joining the panel. And I would like to thank Mr. Sujoy Sen, Head IT, South Asia, Lin India Private Limited. Thank you, sir, for sharing the insights.
Thanks a lot, Nishan, for inviting me for this virtual manufacturing CIO summit. It was very insightful, and I'm grateful for being part of this. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank Mr. Ketan Kirkanis, Head IT India, Clarion Chemicals India Limited. Thank you so much, sir, for joining the panel and sharing the insights.
Thank you, Nishant. It's been a very engaging session, despite having it on a Saturday morning.
Correct.
All right, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining the session, making it as an interesting panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you,
you.
Thanks
everyone.
a lot.
Bye.